What's up, everyone? Today we're going to be talking about a awesome story. Well, technically it's a tragedy, but it's an awesome recovery story. Kind of. It's just a story about how this woman triumphed, and she is pretty much living a happy life despite a very unfortunate accident. Basically, what happened was in 2010, she was about to get married. Her name's Rachel Friedman, and she was pushed into a pool playfully by her best friend. What ended up happening was she went in headfirst, sustained a C6 spinal cord injury, and became a quadriplegic, which pretty much means she can't use her legs now and she goes about in a wheelchair. Since then, she's been married, played wheelchair rugby, surfed through adaptations, of course, blogged for the Huffington Post, written a best-selling book, and most recently became a mother of a beautiful baby girl. And of course, she's been featured on a number of magazines and TV shows. So this is a very, very fascinating story, and I think, these types of things happen. And first off, I think it's great to just be grateful for what you have now, because you never know what life might throw at you. The smallest little thing can end up hurting you tremendously. Believe it or not, there are a lot of very dangerous things that we do on a day-to-day basis that we may not think are very dangerous, but are very likely to hurt us immensely if we make a huge mistake, or someone else makes a huge mistake, which is out of our control, and they hit us. So, for instance, obviously what I'm talking about is a car accident, where driving in a car is almost every day sometimes. And that is a huge dilemma. It's a huge caution. It's one of the biggest causes for death and injury in a lot of nations. And so I think it's very, very important, just to remind yourself how fortunate you are, how grateful you are to be able to move, to be able to talk. One thing I'm starting to implement on a daily basis is writing down or saying things. Writing down is obviously better for a lot of subconscious reasons, but saying to myself or in my mind everything I am grateful for. So I try and think of as many as possible. I started with like 3, but I'm trying to think of more, and you can always think of more the more you think about it. So for instance, I'm grateful I'm young, I'm grateful I can walk with my legs, I'm grateful I'm healthy, I don't have cancer, that I get the opportunity to live in this day and age with all the advances in healthcare and medicine, and the opportunities for education and the internet and blah, 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 blah. So you get the point. Anyhow, I'm bringing up this story about Rachel Friedman because she recently did a Ask Me Anything on Reddit. If you don't know what that is, basically, it's a basic, you can ask her anything as long as you have a Reddit account, and hundreds of thousands of people do have Reddit accounts. So there she went to answer questions. So she's also promoting her book, which is best-selling, of course. It was released last year. I don't know if I'll pick it up, honestly, but the book's titled The Promise, A Tragic Accident, A Paralyzed Bride, and the Power of Love, Loyalty, and Friendship. The thing is, like, all of this can sort of be summarized and bottled down, like the whole story in a nutshell. I mean, it's not the first time I've seen stuff like this, but it is a great refresher to be reminded. I mean, you see it a lot on TV, or for me, I've seen stuff like this in real life. The big thing that comes to mind was that man on American Idol. He got fairly far, and basically, he married his fiance, but about, I can't remember how long into the marriage it was. When they had their kid, I believe, she got into a car accident and she ended up becoming paralyzed, and she could not talk and speak, and he chose to stay with her and cover the medical costs and so forth and everything, and stick around with her. And she was basically paralyzed completely, and she couldn't talk and speak, and she was basically helpless in a lot of ways, and I think she was damaged in the brain in a lot of ways as well. So again, that also was a very inspiring message, because again, it just goes to show you, like, when you're talking about marriage and love, it's one of those things where you really have to separate what truly matters from the superficial things, like how attractive this girl is, how much money or status or whatever else uh, people factor in these days. Because um, you know, situations like this happen, and if you're the person who gets paralyzed, or you're in a situation where your partner gets paralyzed, you have to make sure that, like, before that even happens, you have a really strong connection, because otherwise, they can just leave you if all they care about is how attractive you are, or that's a huge factor. Or it's something like, you can get very depressed or let down, or just beat up when you find out that they leave you. And so I think it's very interesting. And I do think that both genders, males and females, it's a huge problem for them, because I've seen it on both ends. Both genders they can easily be emotionally and chemically and hormonally influenced. There's scientific studies on this. It shows it to a great degree. Some of it has to do with advantages that it gave our ancestors that don't really help nowadays in modern society. But both genders, they can get very influenced by these hormones and emotions, and they can think that this guy likes them, or cares for them, and so forth, or they think that they love this girl, but in reality it's just lust. So keep that in mind. Try and really just think it through. And so, I really found this very fascinating, and the biggest reason was because of how it illustrates one of those tenets of how we ratchet back up or accommodate, or our brains are meant to accommodate for the hardships of life. And there's this scientific study that pretty much showed this, and it was saying how on average, if you look at people after they go through a very traumatic event like getting paralyzed, and you track them a year or 2 years afterwards, they have returned to their levels of happiness before the accident occurred. And for me, I think you can't take that too far, because the key word is on average. So there are people who remain depressed after this. And so, again, generally, it may show that the brain has certain mechanisms for coping or accommodating. And it's also showing that you aren't as, you're more resilient than you think. And you do have natural levels of average happiness. I do think from reading other books that you can increase these on a permanent basis by working on your life, your perspective, and a lot of other things. However, it goes to show that, even with these events, things can go well. And for this case, for Rachel's case, it just illustrates how even if misfortune strikes you and you have been dealt a huge blow, you can still have a great, happy, awesome life, and things can still go very well. You can still have a lot of fun and so forth. For her, she obviously went through a lot, and so it's very interesting. I can imagine it being much worse, though. Imagine if she wasn't married, if the man she married backed out on her after this, or she was still single and then this happened, and she was already having trouble maybe meeting men, and this occurs, and now she could be thoroughly depressed. I mean, I'm seeing some trends with this, and so for me, it's just something that I can see that these things can be a lot worse, and there's probably someone out there who's had these very difficult situations. So it is very interesting, and it reminds me of the story of Anderson Cooper, who is now a very successful millionaire, and from the outside, it looked like he had and I think this is common for a lot of people. You assume they have such amazing lives. He was born into a rich family, very prestigious parents. He went to a very prestigious school, Yale University. But in reality, what happened was after he graduated school, he could not get an entry-level job in the television industry, which is what he wanted to go into, despite his credentials and his connections. And on top of that, he went through struggles in his life, including the suicide of his brother in his early 20s, and I think one of his parents dying, or something else happened. And I think, you know, the more I think about life and I contemplate it, and the more I learn about people and meet so many different people and hear their stories and so forth. Um, First off, well, there are, you know, so many types of people, and generally speaking, a lot of them have, you know, pretty normal lives. But what I've learned is that people are so different at times, and you never know. You can't judge a book by its cover. Maybe 7 or 8 times out of 10, you're right on the mark, and your assumptions are right on the dot. But sometimes it's completely off. And there's these people. Another great example is Lewis Howes. He's a very successful, wealthy um, internet entrepreneur now. But I learned recently that he went through a lot of physical abuse as a child. And so I do think all of us, maybe not all of us, many of us have gone through a lot of things. Maybe it wasn't a one-time event occurrence like what Lewis Howes went through with uh, homosexual rape as a child, but for other people, it could be many, many small things piling up. I think for me, that's more so where, for how I was. And other people, you know, they may have lucked out and none of this may have happened. Regardless, you know, we all go through our struggles, and I guess the message is that you can still achieve happiness despite a big blow coming. Sometimes it's good to prepare for that and understand that, so that you can be ready for that and stay resilient if that were to ever occur, and stay happy and build your life and lifestyle to prepare for that sort of thing. And also realize that you can't judge people or things or make assumptions right off the bat at times, because you will be surprised. Sometimes things aren't what you seem. Whatever it is, perhaps that person that you think doesn't like you because you've been rejected your whole life, or the last 10 girls you talked to you were rejected by, perhaps that person really, really likes you, and you're discounting yourself because of that. Or perhaps you're just a fool, and you just you know, you go about assuming things based on how people look, which is something I think naturally everyone does to a certain extent. But you end up in that one instance assuming this person had a perfect life, when in reality he's gone through a lot, busted his butt to get to where he is. So you never know, and I think that's the beauty of the world. And I think for me, it gives me hope for success in life in a lot of realms, a lot of areas, and also it just shows that you know, this can bring a lot of positive things. That's all I gotta say. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in my next video. Thanks again for watching this unedited video, and I will see you later. Leave a comment down below on your thoughts and opinions on this. I will try to read and respond to most, if not all of them, as long as they're not super negative. And I'll see you guys later.